Hello everyone, welcome to this session. And in this session, we are actually discussing one of the passages from the website Arts and Letters Daily. Now, to anyone and everyone who keeps on asking me, sir, which websites to follow for articles, Arts and Letter Daily is the only website that you need for all your reading requirements. Because if you don't want to go from one website to the other to scavenge articles, Arts and Letters Daily will do that. Now, obviously, you can see this is my Gmail output, and what I have done with the Arts and Letters Daily is that I have subscribed to their newsletter. So the benefit that I am getting upon subscription is that they send me a few articles every week or so. Okay, so if I can just scroll in a little bit, I'll be able to show you. So these are the articles. Yeah, so these are the articles. Wittgenstein at War, Graydon's Crater, David Bromwich, the intellectual historians of the last century regarded game theory as one of the greatest achievements. How wrong they were. Is monogamy morally wrong? So you see all these articles, they are actually probably they are handpicked by the editors themselves or somebody who is at the forefront of good selection of good articles. Having said that, I also think that if you can, out of all these five articles, if you can choose at least one or two articles, that will do your work for the day. Okay, so I am choosing Wittgenstein at War. Let's see. And is there anything else that can help you? I don't really think so. In selection. Okay, so before I start, let me give you the overview. So I think this is the person. Let us read now. Okay, Wittgenstein at War. The philosopher's First World War notebooks reveal a soul in torment, but was fighting on the front line really the making of one of the 20th century's greatest thinker? Actually, now I know that this fellow, Mr. Ludwig Wittgenstein, this is the first time that I'm hearing about him or reading about him rather. He is a philosopher who is actually fighting at the forefront at World War I, and all the torments that his soul is going through, he is describing that in his works. Now we will get to know more about his work while reading this article, right? So let's read the article. Okay. Ludwig Wittgenstein's Tractus Logico-Philosophicus appears to be the only major work of philosophy to have been composed while the author was an active military combatant. And I know for a fact that this Ludwig Wittgenstein probably is the first one who has done such a thing, that he was fighting also at the forefront in World War I and also composing his work. Okay, his philosophical work, to be precise. The next line basically talks about René Descartes. Okay, just for the sake of my pronunciation, I'll not call the person Descartes right now, but it's pronounced Descartes, but right now we'll just spell it out as Descartes or something of that sort. Yeah. So René Descartes was serving in the 30-year war as a volunteer with the Dutch and then Bavarian armies when he first developed the philosophical ideas. Okay, but we don't know whether he saw combat. Wittgenstein enlisted as an infantryman in the Austro-Hungarian army on 7th of August 1914, about a week after the outbreak of the First World War. So just after a week's outbreak of this World War, Wittgenstein was enlisted as an infantryman. So actually he was an active combatant. So he was going through all that fighting and all war thing while he was also composing his philosophical work. From the start of the conflict, he was intent on continuing the work on logic and philosophy that had occupied him for years. Growing out of his collaboration with Bertrand Russell at Cambridge, it held him together under outward circumstances that he found hard to bear. Now, what does this line mean? That it is only because of this, war It is only because of this war that he started his philosophical work, which he started with Bertrand Russell. Okay, in collaboration with Bertrand Russell in Cambridge, this process of journaling his philosophical thoughts or philosophical ideas, I think that helped him under the outward circumstances, which was probably the one that he was in during the war, okay, fighting the war. Now let's go to the next one. Peoples are fascinated by the hidden lives of creative geniuses. The more sordid, the better. Sordid, again, I think, I don't know the exact meaning right now. I don't really want to know the exact meaning, but sordid basically means, I think, the painful, the better. The more painful, the better. Okay. Wittgenstein's private notebooks from 1914 to 1916 reveal that to that interest by allowing the readers to eavesdrop on his agonized emotional life. Eavesdrop basically means ki chupke se sunna. Okay, so listening something. Okay, so maybe 2 or 3 persons are having conversation in a cafeteria, and you're just eavesdropping. You're just listening with no intent on getting involved. So that is called eavesdropping. Okay. So people find readers. Wittgenstein basically allowed the readers to eavesdrop to his agonized emotional life in those 2 years of his military service, during which he produced one of the most influential philosophical works of the 20th century, that is the Tractatus. The Tractatus is a founding document of the analytic tradition in philosophy. Okay, so there is an analytic tradition in philosophy, and Tractatus is the founding document of that. It is a set out theory of logic, language, and the limits of meaning, which revealed. Wittgenstein argued that traditional philosophical problems were based on linguistic confusion. So the philosophical problems are actually based on the linguistic confusion. Linguistic is the verbal, the way how I am speaking. So if what I am speaking you're not able to understand, so there will naturally be a confusion. So Wittgenstein used to say that this traditional philosophical problem is based on the linguistic confusion. The 2 tracks of his life, the emotional and the intellectual, can be followed in some notebooks Wittgenstein kept during that period. So there are a few notebooks on which he used to make those journals. On the right hand pages, he entered his philosophical thoughts in a legible German. So he was a Wittgenstein is a German person. So right hand pages of his notebook, he used to enter the philosophical thoughts, and on the left hand pages in code, he entered his personal feelings: hope, fear, prayer, despair, loathing of himself and other people. So please understand, so there are 2 parts. One part consisted of so there are 2 parts. One part consisted of the philosophical parts, and the other one, this one, consists of his own personal feelings. Okay, that too was not written directly, it was written in codes. So that is why in the beginning of this passage, when we talked about, the entire thing was written in logic and philosophy. So logic is basically the decoding of those codes that he used, and philosophy, of course, is all those questions that he might have encountered. Some of the notebooks, okay, from this one, some of the notebooks were either lost or destroyed by Wittgenstein. So obviously, I mean, these were his personal journals. So probably, they were lost during the, the war period, or maybe he destroyed them on purpose. But 3 from 1914 to 16 survive because they were left in his sister's house in Vienna. After her brother's death in 1951, she made them available to the literary executors, who in 1961 published the right hand pages, the philosophical material, as notebooks 1914 to 16. The left hand pages were not mentioned. They have since been deciphered, the code. Okay, so the thing is that Wittgenstein destroyed most of his work, the journals that he was writing, philosophical right hand side, philosophical left hand side codes. He destroyed most of them, but 3 of these particular journal survived because they were kept with Wittgenstein's sister. Now, upon Wittgenstein's death, which is in 1951, Wittgenstein's sister, made them available to the public through the literary executors. What she did, basically gave them to the executors, and they basically just published the right hand side of the 3 notebooks. Okay. The left hand side have also been deciphered by now, and they were very simple codes. Okay, the code is a simple inversion of alphabet. So A becomes Z, B becomes Y, Z becomes A, and so on and so forth. There was an unauthorized publication of those pages also in 1991. But this book is the first translation into English of Wittgenstein's private remarks. So this book that we are currently, reading the review about, this is the first one that is in English about his remarks. Okay. Now, book of the day, the book of the Pete Doherty didn't write, the book that Pete culture. Okay, so this is basically, I think, the 3 pictures has got nothing to do. I think they are advertisements. Wittgenstein had been dead only for 10 years when the philosophical notebooks were published, and it is hardly surprising that the literary executor, who were his close friend, omitted the personal material. So they knew he would be appalled at its coming to light. So what happens right now is that I would just like to talk about this part. Wittgenstein is now dead, and for 10 years what happens now is that the philosophical notebook that were published by the literary executors, and these literary executors were actually his friends, close friends, and they omitted the personal material. They knew he would be appalled at its coming to light. So basically, appalled means that he would be very much hurt, he will be very much disturbed, distressed. He didn't wanted his own personal material to go out in the public. The philosophical part of it they published, but the personal part of Wittgenstein they did not publish. Okay, this is what they mean. And though he has been, from this line, and though he has been dead for 70 years, it still feels intrusive to read this monotonously repetitive and self-absorbed effusions, as Marjorie Perloff, the distinguished American literary scholar who has translated the notebooks, observe, Wittgenstein's project was himself, self-creation, self-maintenance in a form that he would be able to bear. He isn't interested in the way or the people he encountered, only his own responses and feelings and overcoming their inadequacy. So what does this line talks about? A very vague line. So this basically talks about this person, American literary scholar, who translated the notebook, and he made a remark that the books were actually exactly like Wittgenstein himself, which is they're self-created, self-maintained in a form that does not need anybody's intrusion. And the way the books were written also, he isn't interested in the war or the people that he encounters. So he is only writing about his own responses, his feelings, and the overcoming of his inadequacy. So anything that is inside him which is not adequate according to him. Yeah. Okay, let's look into this one. At the beginning, he expresses anxiety about how he will react to danger. Probably he will be attacked. How will I behave when it comes? Probably we will be attacked. How will I behave when it comes to being shot at? I am afraid of not being killed, but of not fulfilling my duty properly before that moment. God give me strength. Amen, amen, amen. So this is something which was written in Wittgenstein. So at this particular excerpt, he is saying that probably we will be attacked. So we will be attacked. This is a kind of a fear that Wittgenstein is feeling as of right now. And then he is also talking, how will I behave when it comes to being shot at? So somebody, when they shot at you, how will you behave at that circumstance? He is not afraid of death, but he is actually worry of not being able to fulfill the duty properly before that moment. So what duty is he talking about? So if we, if we try to introspect into it, probably the duty of fulfilling the mission of whatever that was, or maybe his own personal duties, whatever. Yeah, he needn't worry, he needn't have worried serving the Eastern Front against Russia. He behaved with consistent courage under fire, volunteered for dangerous assignments such as maintaining highly exposed forward observation post, and was decorated for valor. Again and again, in moments of danger, he writes, God be with me, God is with me, thy will be done, everything is in God's hand. These utterances seem to express hope that he will accept whatever fate brings. Now would be my chance to become a decent human being since I am face to face with death. May the spirit enlighten me. So this is basically, his way of writing his own journals, and he's the author at this point in time is saying that he is actually willing to face death because in a way he has surrendered himself. Okay, so this line basically tells you about that. Now would be my chance to become a decent human being since I am face to face with death. May the spirit enlighten me. Okay, one thing Wittgenstein doesn't agonize about is sex. Okay, interesting. So this is something that does not give him pain. Yeah, sex. He records the highs and lows of his sexual desire, the frequencies of masturbation. Good guy. Sometimes he doesn't masturbate for weeks, sometimes every day. There are a few mentions of visiting the baths when he is in a city of Perloff, takes this to imply sexual encounters. She is intent on breaking with the general distaste of biographers for recognizing Wittgenstein as a carnally active homosexual. Now, the moment I see a she, I have to be a little careful because now they are talking about some other person. Okay, let me read it out once. There's no problem with that. One thing Wittgenstein doesn't agonizes about is sex. He records the highs and lows of his sexual desires and frequencies of masturbation. Sometimes he doesn't masturbate for weeks, sometimes every day. There are a few mentions of visiting the baths when he is in a city, and Perloff takes this to imply. So this is actually the person Perloff takes. So this is the explanation by Perloff. Okay, to imply she is intent on breaking with the general distaste of biographers for recognizing Wittgenstein as carnally active homosexual. Anyway, the notebook entries don't suggest that his sexual drive and its release are a matter of guilt or anxiety. They are just recurring and central part of life. Yeah, so yeah, I mean that's exactly how it should be, right? Where he really can't take command of himself is in his relations to other soldiers serving with him. In the beginning, they are manning a gunboat on the Vistula. So this probably is a place, Vistula, and gunboat probably is a place which they are manning. So they are protecting this gunboat. Okay, so yeah, Vistula is basically a European river, flows into the Baltic Sea, and gunboat, let's see what gunboat means. A small shallow draft boat carrying mounted guns and stuff. So these guys were actually manning this. They were protecting this gunboat in Vistula. And now the writing. My shipmates are a bunch of swine. No enthusiasm for anything. Unbelievable crudity, stupidity, and malice. Okay. Crudity, we know. Crudity basically means that just out of any refinement. Stupidity, I don't need to explain. Malice is evil. Being tortured by most of my shipmates, now as before, I still haven't found the proper mode of behavior that would be satisfactory. I have not yet opted for complete passivity, and perhaps this is a folly, since I am powerless against all these fellows. I overexcite myself for nothing if I resist. Okay, so passivity, if you want to know what the meaning of passivity is, okay, passivity basically means, inactive, a trait of remaining inactive or lack of initiative. Now we read this one. Throughout his life, Wittgenstein was a notoriously difficult character, proud, irascible, intolerant, arrogant, and insulting. I really do not need to explain each of these words, except the one which is this one, irascible. I think this is something to do with, I think irrational or something of that sort. Yeah, intolerant, we all know what intolerant is. Okay, quickly aroused to anger, irascible. Okay. Convinced of his genius and recognizing almost no one as an equal. So Wittgenstein is this difficult character who is proud, irascible, intolerant, arrogant, insulting, convinced of his genius. He is convinced of his own genius, okay, and recognizing almost no one as an equal. He could be hard to take even when surrounded by admirers. In these circumstances, he must have been impossible. He came from one of the richest to most cultivated families in Austria. His father was a steel tycoon, a close associate of most brilliant thinkers in England. Now, for the first time in his life, he was living and working side by side with bunch of illiterate peasants and proletarians. Proletarians basically means the ones who are, the other part of the elites. Okay. So elites basically are the ones who are at the top of the food chain, and proletarians are the bottom half. And he found it hard to keep his disgust in check. Okay. So I'll give you the explanation of proletarian, also the working class, basically the middle class, working class, or the lower middle class, right? So which is the other half of the elite. Elite basically, we all know what an elite class is, the upper class or something of that sort, right? Now at this point in time, what I have realized is I do not really require to read this any further, because this will go on, and it'll take, I think it'll take another 20 minutes for me to finish this one. So this is the best time when I should be stopping this thing. Okay, so we'll continue from this one in the next video, okay, because unnecessarily the video will become longer.